Hi, I'm Frank Tarzeski, inviting you to listen to Music Matters every Friday from 1 to 4 p.m. right here on WRLR 98.3 on your FM dial. I play polkas, I play country, I play crazy songs, I play requests, and jazz. That's Music Matters, 1 to 4 p.m. right here on WRLR 98.3.
Does Katy Perry cause you heart palpitations and extreme nausea? Does Fall Out Boy give you hives? Does Taylor Swift make you break out in a cold sweat? Does formulaic corporate rock radio give you flashbacks of being towel-whipped by jocks in the locker room? No one? Just me? I better talk to my therapist about that. Anyway, Subterranean is on every Thursday night from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. playing the best underground, indie, avant-garde, and non-mainstream music the big stations ignore. In fact, we guarantee each week to play at least 10 artists we've never played before. Join me, Mick Cullen, and Carolyn for Subterranean, Thursdays, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. right here on WRLR.
Hi everybody, Wayne Boyker. Check out my show called The Beatles Get Together, where every week they'll get together with a different group or artist. First I'll play a Beatles song, followed by the featured group or artist of the week. Every Thursday the guest act will change. The only thing that will remain the same will be the great music of the Beatles. Please join me every Thursday afternoon from 3 to 4 o'clock for The Beatles Get Together.
Smile on your brother, everybody get together. Try to love one another right now.
May I be the first to say good afternoon. It's 12 o'clock.
You're listening to 98.3 FM, WRLR LP, Round Lake Heights, Illinois.
And good afternoon and welcome. It is just past noon, just a couple seconds past noon here on WRLR 98.3 FM on your radio dial. My name's Gary Ricci. I'm the pastor of New Hope Christian Community Church right here in Round Lake Heights. And you are tuned in to the What's for Lunch and Other Spiritual Questions radio program. Each week on this show, I tell you what we do, but I don't know. It changes week to week. Special guest this week, my lovely wife Elizabeth, who normally joins us out driving back from Ohio after spending a week with her parents. Here's what that means. So just so you know, I've been by myself all week. The family's been gone. My 4 kids have been gone. 5 days by myself. I have found out I am unable to live on my own. I do not know when to go to bed. I'm not sure what to eat or when to eat. I think I've slept about 7 hours the entire week. Made a number of terrible choices. If my wife's listening, look, I'm going to lie about this later, but it's been a terrible, terrible week. But in order to save the day today, I have a fantastic special guest with me today, Mr. Paul Platt. And I would say this is unique. We talked last week, and Paul, you hold a title I was completely unfamiliar with in the religious world. I had to look it up, and here's the thing. When you were telling me about it, I was looking it up on Wikipedia to sound smarter as we were talking. So Paul is a Maggid, which is a Jewish storyteller and itinerant preacher. It's kind of a position that has a rich tradition and history. Welcome to the program, Paul. How you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you, Gary?
I'm a little tired. I don't know if cranky's a word. I'm not sure if cranky's the word. But I'm a little tired today. But I'm excited that you're on the show today. I think we're going to have a fantastic show.
I'm excited to be here.
So you come highly recommended. Stan Koenig, who has the show on before me, Stan likes to listen to my show and correct what I say about Jesus. So if I come on and I'm talking about Jesus and I'm like, Jesus, he comes in and he goes, hey, Gary, I heard you said that Jesus saves. Moses invests. He likes to do this to me. That kind of level of joke. Are you aware of this? Are you familiar with this with Stan, Paul?
Yes, I am. We bowl in the same league.
Yeah, so you guys you're co-bowlers. You're on the same team or just in the same league?
In the same league.
Now, who's the better bowler, you or Stan?
Depends on the day.
Depends. That sounds like he's better. If you're better, it depends on the day. Sounds like you have to have a lucky day to beat Stan. Stan's very competitive, I know. And well, he's in great shape for a man of 113. Fantastic. I've heard his tennis game is unbelievable. So
we've just got a little further to go to equal Moses.
Just a bit more to go.
Moses was 127 when he died.
127. I heard he didn't look a day over 115, though.
I don't know.
Although you imagine that climate might be tough on the skin. You know, the desert climate, you'd have the weathered look, the sand. Not a lot of moisturizer out there, you know?
Well, you just got to picture Charlton Heston.
So now, Paul, tell me about a little bit about yourself and how you got into this position as a Maggid.
Well, I've been interested in mysticism and Kabbalah for a long time.
Huh. So are Maggid's particularly associated with Kabbalah?
No, but you asked how I got into it. So,
okay. And Kabbalah is kind of, now I'm going to talk off the top of my head a little bit here. Kabbalah, a little bit of the mystic side of Judaism.
Exactly.
A little more, we might call it like a spiritualist, like someone who's, Judaism is the root, but almost for a Christian, almost like a charismatic might be to a Christian, is someone who practices Kabbalah for someone who's Jewish. I don't know if that's a fair comparison or not.
I'm not sure it's fair, but Kabbalah is the mystical teachings of Judaism. So it's absolutely true.
So did you grow up in a more traditional kind of household?
Actually, I grew up in a Reform household.
Okay, so for those who are unfamiliar listening, Reform would be like the most liberal side of that. You have Reform, and you have Conservative, and you have Orthodox. Orthodox, the guys who see with the beards, who work in the jewelry district. Conservative, they're going to keep the dietary laws, that kind of thing. Reform, from what I understand, I grew up in New Jersey, a lot of my family Jewish, a lot of my friends. Reform could mean a lot of things. Reform, I knew some people who grew up Reform who would say they don't even believe in God, but they're considered themselves Jews. What did Reform mean to you?
Reform is the branch of Judaism, like you said, is the most liberal. And it's arranged like anything else. Some Reform congregations, you walk in, you think they're almost conservative.
Okay.
And some you walk in and you wonder what's going on because you don't hear any Hebrew. The basic tenet of Reform, one of them, is that you have a choice, but it must be an educated choice. So you can observe the religious laws that spiritually mean something to you.
Interesting. So you're kind of saying, here's the parts I want to that impact me, and I'm going to observe these things.
Yes, but it has to be knowledgeable, educated, and preferably try it first.
Not just what is convenient necessarily.
It's not, it's not like a lot of people think pick and choose.
But you're going to study for yourself, and there's sort of a sincerity component there.
Yeah.
I find that most people, whatever label they call themselves, are essentially that anyway. You know, that they're going to adhere to the things that mean something to them. You know, or, I mean, sort of the worst case scenario is I'm going to call myself by a name, whether I call myself Christian or Jewish or whatever, but I'm going to do the things that are convenient for me.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
What did it look like for you when you were growing up in the Reform Temple? What was that like for you? Where were you on the serious versus more conservative versus more liberal side of things?
Pretty much in the middle.
Okay.
Like most of the classmates I had. You go to a Sunday school, or you go to a religious school as an after-school thing. Not talking about the day schools. And you're taught what the line of that congregation is, and your basic history. Hebrew school, when I was going to Hebrew school, didn't even teach a conversational Hebrew. And I did very badly with Hebrew, to say the truth.
I took 3 years of Hebrew in seminary school, and I don't remember all the letters. So that's I have sympathy. It's tough.
So I grew up. I got married, and
I'm assuming your wife is Jewish.
My wife was Jewish.
Okay.
She unfortunately passed away in '99.
That's right. I'm sorry to hear that.
So, and my son went through the same education that I did, essentially. And along the way, I started looking for things. And the looking took the form of reading material that started to get me into the mystical way of thinking.
Would you describe yourself as kind of a spiritual seeker?
In a way, I'm also describe myself as a mystic.
Okay. Was all of the looking and seeking sort of inside of Judaism, or did you move outside of that as well? Okay.
Well, to some extent. I read a little bit about Christianity, a little bit about Buddhism, a little bit about Hinduism. Because I was just interested in kind of how it all followed.
Mm.
And then in going to various lectures, I found that when they had the ancient trade routes in the Middle East,
Yeah.
a lot of things traveled in those caravans that weren't trade goods.
You mean ideas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a number of ideas within Judaism, especially in the mystical side, that actually came in from other areas of the world and other traditions. And it was a nice idea, so it was adopted and turned around and made more Jewish. Kind of like Jewish music, where a lot of the Jewish music is melodies borrowed from the culture around them. So a number of the songs that we sing on Shabbat, on Sabbath, German drinking songs. Some of the oldest things people think came down with the tablets from the top of Sinai were actually German drinking songs, French drinking songs.
I think the important thing is that they were drinking songs. So, well, I mean, that's the case of Christianity as well. A lot of the hymns that Luther wrote, Lutheranism coming up in the Reformation were based on pub songs, tavern songs. Yeah, that
was, if you wanted to have something that the people would sing along with, that was the way to do it. It still is.
It still is. Absolutely.
Found that out in college when we started singing some of the prayers. We
might be better off if we were drinking today.
We'll see how that. Who knows?
Yeah.
In college, we started singing some Jewish songs to folk songs.
Oh.
Because when I was in college, folk singing was real big.
So you started to get interested in kind of this mysticism side of things, all that, and what did you find? What kind of drew you in more to say this is something I want to kind of more get involved with and be able to be part of promoting?
That's hard to say. It grew over time. And ultimately, I started teaching a little bit. I did a couple of classes in the temple and things like that. And I got interested more in the mystical connections, the personal connections with God and that kind of thing. And then one day I was poking around on the internet, which I do sometimes, looking at different Jewish sites and other stuff. And the gentleman that ran the classes that I took to become a Maggid has a website. His website popped up. And his website popped up, and I looked at the information. And I said, whoa, that sounds interesting.
Had you heard of a Maggid before?
Yes, but in passing.
Okay. I was surprised when you told me about it, that I was completely unfamiliar with it. It was something that
you start to when you start to get into mysticism, you get into the 17 and 1800s, and you start to run into the Maggids, because some of the Hasidic Rebbes were known as Maggids.
And you were telling me that there was a portion of time when many of the rabbis weren't really preaching messages like we might imagine now.
Right.
And so that Maggids kind of filled in, or maybe I was imagining in my head going to places that wouldn't have rabbis.
Probably that too. The Maggidim, plural, would travel from town to town, and they would not take the place of the rabbi, but as I said, there was a period in time, especially in Eastern Europe, where the rabbis did not preach on a weekly basis. They would lead the service sometimes. They would make decisions on Jewish law. They would counsel people, advise people, but they wouldn't get up at a service and give a 15-minute sermon, except for twice a year. And that was so people knew the laws of Yom Kippur and the laws of Pesach. So the Maggidim would come around, and they would come in, and they would teach people. They would sermonize sometimes, and they would teach using stories.
People love stories.
People love stories.
I can tell the difference on a Sunday when I switch over to a story. You can see people kind of look up. My friend Roy Grossman is sitting in with us today. That's when Roy wakes up. His wife kind of taps him on the shoulder and says, "Okay, here comes the story. It might be funny, so wake up for this one." Yeah.
Yeah. So they would use the stories to illustrate why you should follow this commandment, or what does it mean to follow this commandment, or things of that nature.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would tell stories just to enlighten people, and sometimes just to have a little fun.
Yeah. I mean, and that was a strategy, we talk about that Jesus used quite a bit. He would tell parables, and the parables, you had to kind of figure them out. There's the idea that discovered truth is far more powerful than presented truth. If I tell you, that, the best barbecue place I ever went to is in Grays Lake and you should check it out, you may or may not go. But if you go and you find that place and you eat there and you love it, you'll become an advocate for it, right? You'll have just, because you discovered it, you figured it out, you got there, ooh, I heard this and this, right? And so stories are very powerful that way, as people kind of dissect a story and puzzle it out. Well, what does that mean? How does that apply? Who am I in that story? So you decided to become a Maggid. So that was through this course that this man offered.
Right.
Okay. And was he a rabbi or was he a Maggid?
He's a Maggid.
Okay. All right.
So the names won't mean, but
yeah.
There was a rabbi who actually started another movement within Judaism called Jewish Renewal. His name was Solomon Schechter Shalomi.
That's a great name. I might change my name to Solomon Schechter Shalomi.
He, blessed memory, he passed away a couple of years ago. And he granted a ordination to Shlomo Carlebach as a Maggid, and Shlomo Carlebach granted an ordination to my teacher.
Oh, wow. So you're in the Shlomo line.
Yeah.
You're listening to WRLR 98.3 FM on your radio dial. This is the What's for Lunch and Other Spiritual Questions radio program. The Waukegan Park District is hosting a benefit hockey game between the Waukegan firefighters and the Gurnee firefighters. That should be quite a battle. The game will be Friday, April 7th at 6:15 p.m. at the Rinkside Ice Arena in Gurnee. Tickets can be purchased at the Waukegan Park District, Fieldhouse Sports, Fitness and Aquatic Center, or the Belvedere Recreation Center. All funds raised will support Waukegan families in need and benefit Habitat for Humanity of Lake County. For more information, the phone number is 847-599-6601. Also, the Mano Family Resource Center is hosting a citizenship workshop. That should say Mano is hosting a citizenship workshop on Thursday, April 6th from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. Due to recent migratory changes, it is now more important than ever to become a citizen of the United States. The workshop will be held at the Round Lake Library, 906 Hart Road in Round Lake. For registration and more information, the phone number is 847-201-1521. I currently owe about $48 to the Round Lake Library, so even though I love the place, I will not be visiting until the next time I give blood when they wipe your fines out. So if you're wondering why, I'm not allowed to go there. My guest on the show today, Paul Platt, is a Maggid, which is a Jewish storyteller. And so, Paul, you kind of were telling us a little bit of how you got in the process, but you brought some stories with us today. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like you to tell us one of the stories. And, I come from a Christian perspective on things, but we teach the Old Testament in our church, and I'm interested in those things. I thought it'd be interesting to kind of discuss the stories afterwards, see if we can kind of puzzle them out together and maybe have some conversation going that way. So tell us about the first story you brought, and then read it for us.
Okay. The first story I'm going to do for you has to do with a person called the Baal Shem Tov.
The Baal Shem Tov.
Baal Shem Tov is actually Rabbi Israel ben Eliezer.
Okay.
This is his actual name. He lived 1698 to 1760.
Okay.
So that puts it in a period of time. Eastern Europe.
All right.
Poland, Ukraine, that kind of geography. He was the founder of the Hasidic movement,
which still around today.
Is still around today, and very mystical. He was known then as a mystic. He was also known as a healer, both spiritual and physical.
So he had some physical healings attested to him.
Yes. Now, good word. We don't know for sure.
The word attested.
Yes,
Okay,
the word attested. He also, the Baal Shem Tov means master of the good name.
I know what Tov means. I know
Yeah.
that means good. Yeah.
So Baal Shem Tov, Baal is master, Shem is name. So
Okay.
master of the good name is talking about the names of God. So these people who were Baalei Shem Tovs were people who were supposed to know how to use the various names of God, especially the four-letter name of God that nobody knows how to pronounce anymore,
Yeah.
to accomplish healings, to
Before I get myself in trouble, would you you talked about the four-letter name of God. I don't know if I can spell it on air. I don't want to offend you. The Yod He Vav He, right?
Right.
So the if I pronounce that, is that a problem or no? So if you've heard some called Yahweh or Yahweh, that's the
Yehovah is another one.
Yeah, so that's where even like people get the name Jehovah.
That's
is
right.
by taking those letters and inserting vowels in them, guessing. No one really knows how it was pronounced. We haven't heard it pronounced, but it is.
It's not guessing.
Well, I'm saying when someone makes it Jehovah, they're guessing.
No, they're not. Because what happened is, because in Judaism we don't know how to pronounce that, way back when that was lost, they wanted, when you see that in the Bible in the Hebrew,
Yeah.
we can't pronounce it. We don't know how to
Well, and there's
pronounce
no vowels in the original,
Right.
in the Hebrew manuscripts. Yeah.
it. Right. So what they did in the manuscripts that had vowels is they took the vowels from the actual Hebrew word Adonai, which is spelled differently, which literally means Lord,
Which means Lord. Yeah.
like Lord of the Manor kind of
When you
thing.
hear someone say like Baruch atah Adonai,
No,
but-
that's name of God.
yeah, but like that's when if someone might be familiar with that prayer, that's the word
Right.
you hear.
The Adonai part.
Yeah.
So they put the vowels from the word Adonai, which is Aleph Dalet Yud, Nun Yud, different spelling, and they put it under the letters of the four-letter name of God to remind people to say Adonai.
Oh, that's interesting.
Now, if you take those vowels and you use the letters with the vowels, you get Yehovah.
I did not know that. I did not know
And that's Jehovah.
that. Okay.
And because some translators heard, when it was translated into other languages, they heard Adonai, and they knew that Adonai meant Lord, again, as Lord of the Manor. Then when they translated the Hebrew Bible into other languages, they would use that language's word for Lord. And that's one of the ways that the word Lord
That's
got
interesting.
into the English Bible.
Well, and names of God are interesting. And, we have lots of names of God we see in Scripture, and a lot of they mean different things. You try to describe this indescribable being, So when you think about, El Shaddai, I think was the double-breasted one, right? And Elohim is a plural name for God.
That's right.
Which as Christians we talk about the Trinity. That makes sense to us that way. But all the different names kind of working together to describe something that is so great that we can't really describe it, but we do our best with those names. All right, well, get us to the story.
So,
okay.
Yes, let's get to the story. So this is a
We'll
story.
just talk about the stories and never get to the story. And
Yeah.
then the show will be over. Yeah.
Well, this is a story about the Baal Shem Tov.
Okay.
This is why I wanted to introduce who it was. We have an idea of who it was. So there was once a time when the Baal Shem Tov learned from heaven that there was a shepherd that could pray better than he could. So he got very interested in this. He wanted to meet this person, or at least observe this person. So he found out where this shepherd could be found, and he got a few of his disciples, and they got in a wagon, and they went out to where he was told he could find this particular shepherd. They got to a hill. They pulled up on the road at the bottom of the hill, and they looked up on the hill, and about halfway up the hill, there was a shepherd, and he was calling his flock together and taking them to a watering trough. So they got partway up the hill and found a spot where they could watch. And the shepherd took his flock, gave them water, and while they were drinking, he looks up and he says, Master of the universe, I'm a poor shepherd. I didn't grow up in a Jewish household. I don't know any Hebrew. I don't know any prayers. What can I do to praise you? He says, oh, wait. I have my shepherd's horn. So I can blow on my horn and praise you with the sound of the horn. And he took this huge, deep breath and he blew on his horn. And it was the loudest, clearest tone that anybody had ever heard. And he blew and he blew and finally stopped and fell on the ground exhausted. And he just lay there for a short time. He recovered and he stood up and he said, Master of the world, I'm just a simple shepherd. I don't know the Torah. I don't know how to pray. What else can I do for you to show my love for you? Oh, I know shepherd songs. I'll sing the shepherd songs in praise of you. And he started singing these shepherd songs, and he sang and he sang and he sang his. And again, he got done and he fell on the ground, exhausted. He recovered and he called out, Master of the world, what's it worth that I blew on my horn and sang songs? That still isn't enough to praise you. Still not enough. I wonder if there's something else that I could do. Let me think. What can I do? I know exactly. And with that, he stood on his head with his feet up in the air waving. And he flipped himself up on his feet and he started turning somersaults one after the other, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until finally he collapsed on the ground, totally exhausted. Now, the Baal Shem Tov and his disciples, you realize, were still watching all of this. And they were amazed by what they saw. Finally, he gets up again and he says, it's still not enough. What can I do? There is something else. Yesterday, the noble that owns the sheep gave a banquet for all of his servants and the shepherds and the people that looked after the crops. And at the end of the banquet, he gave us each a silver coin. I'm going to take this coin and give it to you. And with that, he took out the silver coin and he threw it up in the air. And then the Baal Shem Tov saw this hand come down from heaven to accept this coin. And he turned to his disciples and he said, this simple shepherd has taught me the meaning of the verse in Deuteronomy, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might.
It's a beautiful story. That's really cool. Very nice. Well told. Nice job. Nice job. Yeah, it is. You know, we're hearing that. It reminds me of a couple of different stories, you know, that Jesus tells, actually. So you think of the story of the widow with the two mites. I don't know if you're familiar with that story. This very quickly he's watching people give at the temple, and this people come and they announce their gift with big fanfare and this huge gift, and then this widow comes and all she has is 2 coins. And she puts the 2 coins in, and Jesus looks at his disciples and says, you know, she's the greater because she's given all she has, right? There's this the point of exhaustion, to the everything, my everything. There's a level of, you think about that shepherd, you go, the shepherd, there's a trust in God there, right? I can give him my last coin. I can give him my last breath. I can give him my, if you're a shepherd, that's a physical job.
Mm-hmm.
You need your physical self to protect from wolves and all things that are going on. And yet to say, I can give all this to God because I know he's my provider, financially, physically, emotionally, all that stuff. That's a really cool story. You're listening to WRLR 98.3 FM on your radio dial. It's the What's for Lunch on our Spiritual Questions radio program. My special guest, Paul Platt, a Maggid, a Jewish storyteller, with us today. And we'll be back after these messages from our sponsors.
Brighten up your lunch hour with Yesterday Once More with Stan Koenig. Stan plays all your classic favorites from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Simpler times when music was music. These are the songs you fell in love to, the music that inspired you, and most importantly, the songs that make you smile. So turn back the clock by tuning in to Yesterday Once More every Friday from 9 a.m. till noon, right here on 98.3 FM WRLR.
Southern Illinois University Carbondale is a proud sponsor of WRLR Radio. SIU Extended Campus offers bachelor degree completion programs in elementary education, special education, industrial management, and applied engineering at the University Center of Lake County in Graysley. Adult evening and weekend classes are available. For more information, their website is extendedcampus.siu.edu.
Webster University is a proud sponsor of WRLR. Recognized by U.S. News and World Report, Webster University is a VA Yellow Ribbon school serving the military and civilians in Lake County for over 40 years. Degree programs include Masters of Business Administration, Masters of Arts in Management and Leadership, and Masters of Arts in Human Resources Development. They also offer several online options, including undergraduate degree completion. Their accelerated program offers classes taught by qualified instructors who are also professionals in their field. For more information, their website is www.webster.edu/Great Lakes.
And we're back on the What's for Lunch program. A little after 12:30. My name is Gary Ricci. I'm the pastor of New Hope Christian Community Church right here in Round Lake Heights, with services at 8:45, 10 o'clock, and 11:15 on Sundays. And I'm here with Paul Platt today. Paul is a Maggid, which is a Jewish storyteller. I was asking him over the break, where do you tell your stories? He said, wherever I can. So share with a story with us just before the break about a shepherd who is renowned for his prayer life, and so a great teacher goes and watches him, and he shows his prayer life by, even though he's a simple man, kind of working himself to exhaustion, blowing his horn, even doing like acrobatics and giving to God. And the illustration of the famous passage in Deuteronomy, you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Right? And Christians would add the piece on at the end where Jesus says, and you should love your neighbor as yourself, right? That's the golden rule, right?
Right.
Based on that. So I want to ask you, Paul, as I was hearing that story, I always like to think practically. As I'm hearing that story, I'm sort of thinking about that for myself, and I'm going, man, am I trying, is God getting my best? Is he getting my all? How do you process that when I'm guessing you've told that story many times.
A few.
Yeah. I always say that, the preacher always has to learn first before he can. Was there a reason why that story, did it affect your life in some way? How has that kind of moved you or drawn you closer to God to hear that story over and over again? What's God doing with it in your life?
Well, that particular verse in Deuteronomy has always been sort of a problem, not just to me, but to many people, because it starts off saying, you shall love the Lord your God. Mm. So here's a commandment to love.
Yeah.
That's problematic to start with. Mm. And then it says, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Well, heart I can understand. Soul I can gather what it means. With all your might, that's where we start talking, what does that mean?
Mm.
And from this story, I learned that you can do many different things to show your love for God.
Mm.
They don't necessarily have to be giving money.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have to be public.
Mm.
because the relationship between you and God is just that. It's between you and God. It's not between my audience and God. It's between me and God. And this shows an example of a simple person who really doesn't have all the learning. Never went to a college, never went to a seminary, probably doesn't even go to services except on the high holy days because he's out with the sheep.
Yeah.
Okay. King David was out with the sheep,
Man can learn a lot being out with the sheep.
Yeah, apparently so.
Yeah.
And he just does what he can do and hopes that it's enough. And feels that no matter what he can do, it's not enough. So he's developing this personal relationship with God.
Yeah.
I'll praise God the best way I can, knowing that it's probably not enough, but hoping so.
You see that? You see a heart for pleasing God there. My desire. There's a verse Apostle Paul writes in Galatians that strikes me. He says, "Am I now trying to win the approval of men or of God, or am I trying to please men?" So if I was still trying to please men, I would not be a servant of Christ. And it always strikes me like, who am I trying to impress? Am I living for others and what they think of me? And and is my education meant to impress them, or is it meant to deepen my relationship with God? Is my giving meant to impress people, or is it out of a heart of generosity back to God, of saying, I trust you and this is yours? That's a really challenging story. It's beautiful, really beautiful, well told. I want to make sure we get to the other one before, and I want to take some of these texts that we've gotten as well.
Okay.
So you brought another story for us.
I brought a couple.
Okay.
You want to take the texts first, or you want to?
No, let's go.
Okay. Which one should I use? Okay. There's another great rabbi called Nachman of Bratslav. And he lived a little bit later, 1772 to 1810. He's actually the great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov.
Interesting.
There actually is a movement within Hasidism called the Bratslavers, who were originally his followers.
It's also another name for liverwurst.
Yeah, something like that.
I'm just kidding.
But the
Braunschweiger.
Close, not necessarily interchangeable.
Yeah.
When he died, they never elected another Rebbe. And to this day, they don't have a Rebbe as the leader of their.
Now, I've never heard I've never heard the term Rebbe as opposed to rabbi.
Yeah, a rabbi is a teacher and a decider of law, and what we all know as a rabbi. A Rebbe within the Hasidic world, usually they were rabbis, but they were also spiritual leaders who would counsel their people on a spiritual basis, many times coming from the mystical traditions. And they would tell people what they should do. Generally very charismatic leaders.
So more of the counseling kind of guidance side of things.
People would go to them to say, we're trying to have a child and my wife isn't getting pregnant. Can you offer a prayer for us that we should have a child?
Okay.
You wouldn't necessarily go to a rabbi with that.
Interesting. I'm not familiar with that. That's, that in kind of our tradition, that's sort of an all-in-one kind of job, but those were more segmented up. So he would, in that position, he would pray for them and give them an Al Green record and say,
something
good
like
luck.
that.
Okay, all right.
It's another thing for you to look up on the internet.
Well, you got to be careful what you look up on the internet. So. All right, so this is another. Okay.
So there's this little. It's relatively short. It's more in the line of a parable.
Okay.
And once there was a Jew named Isaac, and he thought he had a life that was pretty good going on from day to day, until he had a dream. And he dreamed that he was standing near the castle of the king on a hillside with a shovel. And he would start to dig in the hillside, and he would find a chest with a huge treasure in it. And then he'd wake up.
Mm.
And the next day, he had the same dream. And the next day after that, he had the same dream, exactly the same dream.
Hmm.
And he thought to himself, this is too much. I've got to do something. So he decided he would actually go to the capital city, and he would find this hillside and see what, maybe there is a treasure there.
Hmm.
So he traveled. Of course, he was walking, so it took him a number of days. And he got to the castle, and there's guards all over the place. So there's no way he could dig in the hillside. It's sure to attract the attention of the king's guards.
Sure.
And as he's standing there, one of the guards, in fact, does come up to him and say, "What are you doing here?" And he turns around and he says, maybe I just better tell him the truth. So he tells him the whole story. And the guard starts to laugh. You silly Jew. Dreams. I had a dream. I was in some house in this village. And he's describing the house in the village. And I went into this house, and in the kitchen, under the floorboards, was this great treasure. If I really believed these dreams, I'd be traveling to this village. And he's laughing, and he's laughing. He says, "Go home." Well, Isaac, listening to this, was very interested in what this guy was saying, because he was describing his village and, in fact, his house. So he went back, and he thought about this on the way back. He went into his house, and sure enough, when he pulled up the floorboards, there, in fact, was a treasure. And he used this treasure to help the people who were in need. Now, sometimes it's very true that we have to travel a great distance to find something that is close to us. Matter of fact, in Deuteronomy again, Moses is addressing the people, and he says, all of these commandments which I've been teaching you, they're not up in heaven. So you should ask somebody to go and get them. And they're not across the ocean on some faraway beach. They're in your mouth, and they're in your heart. So you don't have to go a great distance to find what's in your heart. So
it's very encouraging, to say, I think there's a lot of people who would say that my life is incomplete, or the thing that I'm looking for, I'm blocked from because I don't have the money, or I can't go here, I can't go there, I can't get this education. But to say that in the world I'm in now, the place where I am is a place where I can know God, I can have purpose, I could, that there is a treasure in your house, basically. You almost think of that phrase, bloom where you're planted, that God's put you in a spot, that he can use that spot. That's really neat. That's really neat. What does that one do for you when you say, gosh, when I hear that, and I, forgive me if this is too personal, you've been through some tragedy, you mentioned that you'd lost your wife, and terrible thing to go through. I watched my father lose my mother when she was 38. Was there a comfort in that, to say, even in the midst of this kind of tragedy and hard time, that God has something for me? Or does that not apply? Does those things don't connect?
I first heard this particular story when I was at a retreat that I attended for something like 8 years. That was a retreat on Jewish meditation. And there was a cantor who was part of the faculty who actually wrote a song that combined this story with that quote from Deuteronomy. And I was just, it's a nice song to begin with. And I was just struck by the words that he used. And then I went and looked up the actual little parable, which is about half the length of what I told. I expanded it a little bit to make it a halfway decent story. And
Maggids have freedom to do that kind of stuff.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've done some stories where I've totally made it up myself. So this struck a chord with me almost not on a conscious level. And it was like, well, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
That when you're trying to find something, especially something spiritual, you don't go looking around all over the place. You start by looking here, inside.
Yeah.
And
that's the lesson of the Wizard of Oz as well, right?
Works in a lot of places.
Works in a lot of places, yeah.
Works in a lot of places.
They say, you know, truth ripples, right? If it's true, it's going to play out in all kinds of different ways and different mediums.
The nice thing about this particular story is you can alter it slightly to focus on different areas where that truth.
You kind of wonder, like, who am I in this story? Am I the guy who takes the trip? Am I the soldier? You know, who am I? How do I best fit in this? Yeah. Listen to WRLR 98.3 FM on your radio dial. This is the What's for Lunch, our Spiritual Questions radio program. I'm here with Paul Platt today, who is a Maggid, been sharing some stories with us from the Jewish storytelling tradition. We'll be back after these messages from our sponsors.
WRLR is community radio.
I feel much more informed with what's happening today.
When we say community, we really mean it.
It's not like corporate, and it's just a good station, you know?
We don't belong to some large corporation that makes a profit from this station.
Because I like the diversity.
And listeners won't be forced to listen to large blocks of advertising. Operations at community radio stations are made possible through grants and underwriting from companies within this area of operation, and donations, funds and equipment, services, and time from area residents who volunteer their time to get involved.
It's as if it's my next door neighbor talking to me, only he's on the radio instead of next door to me.
Real people just like you.
I like them. They tell it like it is.
Local focus, local news, local music, of the local people, and by the local people.
It's different than the rest of the stuff I hear.
I love the show. I listen every day.
WRLR.
Hey, are you looking for some inspiration to end your weekend? Then look no further than right here to Soul Sweet Gospel Radio Show, only on WRLR 98.3 FM. I am your host, Georgia Boy, and I bring you the best in gospel music and also give church announcements too. Come be my special guest every Sunday night at 9 p.m. only on Soul Sweet Gospel, God's music for your soul.
I'm more resourceful than I thought.
My suit can still make an impression.
My video games are still game changers.
And my lamp can bring others a bright future.
Because when I donate my stuff to Goodwill,
it helps fund job placement and training for people right in my community.
Now my stuff gets a second chance.
And will give someone in my community
a second chance too.
Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. That's goodwill.org. This message brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
And we're back with Paul Platt. Paul, thanks so much for being on the show today. I really enjoyed this today. This is a little different flavor for us here on the What's for Lunch program. And Paul is a Maggid, which is a Jewish storyteller, and has kind of shared a couple of stories with us today. And I'm looking forward. We're going to get lunch after this, which is nice. I don't know what you're in the mood for anything lunch-wise today?
Food.
Do you have a favorite? I mean... All right, now, can I tell you?
I'm open.
So my stepmother is Jewish, and so I have only a handful of the things that of the foods that I really enjoyed as a kid. Though she would make a really good noodle kugel, very nice. She made a nice brisket. Lynn, if you're listening, your brisket always top notch, very nice. And then and this is something we would buy, but I don't think I'd ever had macaroons until she came into our life, and so and also she would get the chocolate covered matzah. Which I don't even know if that's legit, but it was delicious. One time she took me, we went to we went into a Jewish deli, which there's plenty of where I grew up. I'm from New Jersey. But she goes, "What do you want? Order anything you want. I'm buying you lunch." And I ordered a cheese dog. And she goes, "Yeah, you're not going to get that here." All right. So I have a question I ask everybody who comes on the show. I'm interested to see what you would say. So first of all, imagine that, the Lord of the universe, Master, God comes to you and says, "Paul, you're one of my favorites. I want to take you to lunch." He's paying. First of all, where do you go? It's radio, Paul.
Yes,
so,
yes, I know. You ask me questions.
Tough. I know.
That's an interesting question. I suppose we would go to a really good Jewish deli.
Very nice.
Not necessarily here.
Now, what are you getting? Like pastrami? What are you getting?
Oh,
matzo ball soup.
Or chicken noodle.
Chicken noodle.
You have to have some kind of chicken soup.
Sure.
And I would probably get corned beef. Very, very common.
All right,
but really
the good
high
stuff.
Quality.
A nice pickle. Yeah. All right.
Really high quality.
All right. So
and of course, he could order whatever he wants.
Whatever he wants. Yeah. Probably have the lamb. So you're sitting at lunch with God. You're having your corned beef. He's having whatever he's having, right? Maybe a little fish. I don't know. And he says, "Paul, ask me anything, and I'll give you a straight answer. Not a parable, not a story, not a song. I'll give you a straight answer. What do you ask God?"
Oh, that's another good one.
I like that if it was the what you would have for lunch was the harder question.
Yeah.
Like that. This one you're more ready for. Yeah.
Yeah. What would I ask? I would it would probably be very mystical and Kabbalistic.
Okay. Give me a sense of the question.
How did the universe actually get created?
Wow.
Because we have the scientific version,
mm-hmm.
and we have the biblical version.
Mm-hmm.
That's two.
Yeah.
But there is also a Kabbalistic version of
no, I'm not familiar with this.
And it has to do with...
Our audience is probably enjoying the fact that I'm I don't know half the stuff you're talking about today. This is good.
But according to Kabbalah, God had to try twice. It didn't work the first time.
What?
It has to do with vessels. There's 10 vessels.
According to Kabbalah, God had to try again?
Yeah. I'll try and do this quick.
I was going to say, this seems like a problem, but go ahead. All right.
Okay. First of all, God had to withdraw himself or herself from a part of the universe because God was everywhere, encompassing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he had this desire to create the universe, but it had to be created outside of God. So he had to withdraw. And then he kind of broadcast into this space a ray of energy of the creative force. And then according to one of the Kabbalistic theories, there are 10 vessels that this force went through, each one representing many things, among them being an aspect of God for each one. And they go from God to the world we live in. And the energy came through these things to perform the creative function. Except God miscalculated and the vessels weren't strong enough and they shattered.
You lost me at God miscalculated, but okay.
Okay. We anthropomorphize God all the time.
Yeah.
Give him human attributes.
Yeah.
The second time he did a better job creating these vessels and everything succeeded. And especially in the Hasidic world, they feel that they have to find all of these broken shards of these vessels and return them to God. And when that happens is when the Messiah will come. So it's all tied into that.
Interesting. Okay.
So my question to God would be, how did it really work?
How did it really work? What actually happened? That's interesting. I did not know that Kabbalah had a flawed God, a God who could make mistakes. That's interesting. I wonder how that. Gosh, I don't know much about Kabbalah other than Madonna practiced it. That's all I know.
And that's not the part that I'm talking about.
We just have a couple minutes, and I teased you with this a little earlier on the break. What do you? So maybe I'm making some assumptions about you. I'm assuming that you're a believing Jew, right? That you believe in God. That the God of the Bible is the God of the Hebrew Scriptures is God, or maybe there's some things there. And are you someone who is waiting for the Messiah? Do you believe that there is a Messiah coming?
Either the Messiah as a person, some believe that, or a messianic time.
Okay.
When the world
but that's
will be
something you
changed.
believe in.
That is something I believe in, yes.
So what do you do with Jesus? Where do you fit him in? How do you? Yeah.
Fourth hand at the bridge table?
There you go. What did Stan say? Heard he was a good bowler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Stan always has a ball with comments like that.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. You really set him up and knocked him down there, Paul. Very nice.
That's true.
There you go.
Right up my alley.
Yeah. Just don't go in the gutter.
What were we talking about again?
What do you do with Jesus? I mean, here's, from a Christian perspective, here's a guy who makes messianic claims, right? He says, I and the Father are one. When you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Calls himself Lord of the Sabbath. The Pharisees tried to kill him a couple of times because he claimed to be God. What do you do with, so he kind of takes the I'm a good person off the list, right? What do you do with Jesus?
Okay. Was Jesus an actual person? Yes.
Yeah.
Was Jesus a rabbi? Again, I would say yes. A teacher, a rabbi. He lived and died as a Jew. I don't think it was his intention to create a daughter religion. That was actually done by Paul some years after his death.
We would disagree on this, but okay.
Well, until that time, the people who believed in Jesus kind of stayed sort of under the umbrella of Judaism. There were a lot of shared practices.
Yes, I would say, they were considered a Jewish sect for the first...
Jewish sect.
Yeah.
And I think it was Paul.
I mean, the first 100,000 Christians were Jews.
Yeah.
Including many priests.
Yes. And Paul actually codified the rules for Christianity, and he did it in such a way that it separated the two into separate religions. But that was some years after Jesus died. So he lived a Jew, he died as a Jew, and the basic difference is I don't believe that he was the predicted Messiah.
Okay. Have you read the New Testament?
Parts of it.
Parts of it. Okay. I appreciate you so much coming on the show today, Paul. We could do another hour on Jesus, I think, or 10 hours. So, and I encourage those who are listening, read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, see what Jesus says about himself.
Can I give you one joke?
Stan would like to tell a joke. You got to tell it on a microphone, though, Stan, so we can hear you, okay? All right. And now we're going to close with a joke from Stan. And we have a serious conversation about God, about the Messiah, and now a joke from Stan.
Paul, do you know what a bracha is? A bracha?
You mean a blessing?
Yeah. All right. Anyway, this guy went out and bought a Mercedes. Did I tell you this one?
No.
He went out and bought a Mercedes. So he wants to get a blessing. So,
speak into the mic, Stan.
Okay. He wants to get a blessing. So he goes to the Orthodox rabbi. Ask the Orthodox rabbi, do you know a blessing, a bracha for the Mercedes? He says, no, I don't think so. He says, try the conservative rabbi. Goes to the conservative rabbi. Says, do you know a bracha for a Mercedes? He says, no. He says, try the reform rabbi. He goes to the reform rabbi. He says, do you know a bracha for a Mercedes? And the rabbi said, what's a bracha?
All right. Thanks for tuning in, folks.
Yes, indeed.
Frank Tarzeski is coming up with his fantastic eclectic mix of songs all over the map. I'm assuming we're going to get some Chuck Berry today. A little Chuck Berry today. Have a fantastic Friday. I'll be back with the lovely Elizabeth Ricci next Friday, and we'll catch you next week.
Disabilities. Community members can gather information on educational opportunities, employment services, health services, and much more. For more information, contact Karen Para at 847-543-2454. A list of participating organizations can be found at www.consideroptions.org. This message is brought to you by CLC and WRLR.
Hello, Lake County Trombone Dave here. Every Tuesday night at 9, right here on WRLR, I'll be serving up some thick Chicago gumbo. Join me for a hot mixture of blues, jazz, soul, doo-wop, and rock and roll. Any genre, any era, blended in with what's happening today. Bring a cold beverage and some hot sauce for Chicago gumbo.
I love science.
Hey, Chicago. If you're like me and you love science, then you should tune into Science for the Win, your source for science news and talk, where we take the latest science of the day and break it down to see how it affects us. Join me Saturdays at 11 a.m. right here on WRLR.
I love science, and I love Charles Darwin.
Cause I don't think it's bold to question what you're told. If you're told that the world's 1,000 years old, there's nothing here to argue. It's just a process, not an ideology.
Our time is 1 p.m.
You're listening to 98.3 FM, WRLR LP, Round Lake Heights, Illinois.